As darkness fell over Naval Base Coronado, the atmosphere at the weapons facility grew tense. Powerful floodlights illuminated the firing ranges, creating harsh shadows that seemed to mirror the growing divide among the observers. Sarah could sense that tonight would be different, more challenging, more scrutinized, and potentially more dangerous. Chief Rodriguez gathered the remaining female candidates. Over the past 3 days, the group had shrunk from 12 to 8 women. 4 had voluntarily withdrawn after struggling with the heavier weapons, choosing to return to their regular duties rather than face potential failure in front of the growing crowds. Tonight we're testing night vision operations, Rodriguez explained. You'll be using weapons equipped with suppressors and advanced optics. This is the kind of training typically reserved for special operations personnel. Sarah noticed that Lieutenant Commander Hayes had been joined by several other senior officers, including Captain Morrison, the base's executive officer. Their presence indicated that this evaluation had attracted attention at the highest levels of command. The first weapon was a suppressed M4 carbine equipped with an advanced night vision scope. Sarah had never used night vision equipment before, but she had studied the technical manuals extensively. The green, ethereal world visible through the scope took some adjustment. As she settled into her firing position, Sarah could hear whispered conversations from the observation area. The comments were no longer dismissive, they were analytical. People were genuinely curious about how she would perform under these more complex conditions. The targets were barely visible human silhouettes positioned at various distances up to 400 meters away. Sarah would have to identify, engage, and move between multiple targets while wearing night vision goggles that limited her peripheral vision and depth perception. She began the course methodically, acquiring each target through her scope and delivering precise shots. The suppressed weapon made only soft coughing sounds, and Sarah found the recoil much more manageable than unsuppressed firearms. Her shots were consistently accurate, and she completed the course well within the time limit. But the real test came with the next weapon, a suppressed sniper rifle equipped with thermal imaging. This was technology that even many SEAL snipers had limited experience with. The thermal scope showed heat signatures rather than visible light, creating an alien landscape of hot and cold zones. Sarah studied the scope's display, learning to interpret the thermal signatures. Warm objects appeared bright against cooler backgrounds, but the lack of detail made target identification challenging. She would need to engage targets at distances up to 600 meters, based solely on heat signatures. The first target was relatively easy, a warm mannequin positioned against a cool metal background. Sarah acquired the target, calculated the distance, and fired. Through the thermal scope, she watched the bullet's heat trail connect with the target. The subsequent targets became increasingly difficult. Some were partially concealed behind cover. Others were positioned to create confusing heat signatures. But Sarah adapted quickly, learning to read the thermal patterns and adjust her aim accordingly. By the end of the thermal shooting exercise, Sarah had achieved a perfect score. More importantly, she had demonstrated an intuitive understanding of advanced weapons technology that impressed even the most skeptical observers. Captain Morrison approached Rodriguez during a brief break between exercises. "Chief, I need to ask you something off the record," Morrison said quietly. "Is Martinez really this good? Or is there something else going on here?" Rodriguez's response was immediate and firm. "Sir, I've been training special operations personnel for 15 years. Martinez has natural abilities that I see maybe once every few years. Her performance is completely legitimate." Morrison nodded thoughtfully. "I'm getting calls from Washington about this evaluation. There are people very interested in the results." The evening's final challenge was the most complex yet. A simulated combat scenario using multiple weapon systems. Sarah would need to navigate through an obstacle course while engaging targets with different weapons, simulating the chaos and weapon transitions common in real combat situations. The course was designed like a small urban battlefield, complete, with buildings, vehicles, and multiple firing positions. Sarah would start with a pistol, transition to a rifle, then finish with a light machine gun. Each weapon change had to be accomplished quickly while under simulated enemy fire. As Sarah Prepared for the exercise, she noticed that the observation crowd had grown even larger. Word had spread throughout the base about her exceptional performance, and sailors from multiple units had come to witness what many were calling a historic demonstration. Lieutenant Commander Hayes stepped forward to brief Sarah on the exercise. His attitude had changed noticeably since the first day. He was no longer dismissive, but he still seemed determined to find her limits. Martinez, this exercise simulates a combat patrol that encounters multiple threats. You'll have 30 rounds for the pistol, 120 rounds for the rifle, and 200 rounds for the machine gun. Your score will be based on accuracy, speed, and tactical movement. Sarah nodded, checking her equipment one final time. She had watched other candidates attempt this exercise, and she understood the challenges. The key was maintaining accuracy while moving quickly between positions and managing ammunition carefully. The exercise began with Sarah entering the first building. Targets popped up at random intervals, and she engaged them with her pistol while moving through the structure. Her shots were fast and accurate, each target falling with single, well-placed rounds. The transition to rifle was smooth. Sarah dropped the empty pistol and seamlessly picked up the M4 carbine. The targets in this section were at longer ranges, requiring more precision. She moved tactically between positions, using cover effectively while maintaining accurate fire. The machine gun segment was the most challenging. The M249 saw was heavier and more difficult to maneuver than the previous weapons. But Sarah had learned to handle heavy weapons over the past few days. She laid down suppressive fire on multiple targets while advancing through the final section of the course. When the exercise ended, Sarah stood breathing heavily in the middle of the course, surrounded by fallen targets. The range safety officer called for a ceasefire, and officials began tabulating her score. The crowd waited in tense silence as Rodriguez examined the targets and calculated the results. When he finally announced Sarah's score, the impact was immediate and dramatic. Martinez has achieved the highest score ever recorded on this exercise, Rodriguez announced. She hit 94% of her targets while completing the course in record time. The observation area erupted in cheers and applause. Even some of the previously skeptical officers were clapping enthusiastically. Sarah had not just met the standards, she had redefined what those standards could be. But the celebration was interrupted by an unexpected announcement from Captain Morrison. Ladies and gentlemen, I've just received word from Naval Special Warfare Command. They want to send a team to observe tomorrow's exercises. The implications of Morrison's statement sent ripples through the crowd. Naval Special Warfare Command oversaw all SEAL operations. Their interest in Sarah's performance suggested that her demonstration was being taken seriously at the highest levels of the military. As the crowd began to disperse, Rodriguez approached Sarah privately. Martinez, I need you to understand something. Tomorrow isn't just another evaluation. There are going to be people here who can make decisions about your future and the future of women in special operations. Sarah felt the weight of his words. She had started this evaluation hoping to prove that women could handle military weapons. Now she found herself in a position to potentially influence military policy at the national level. That night, Sarah sat in her apartment overlooking the Pacific, processing the day's events. Her phone rang repeatedly. Friends, family members, and even reporters had somehow gotten word of her performance, but she ignored them all, focusing instead on mental preparation for whatever tomorrow would bring. She thought about her grandfather's words about fear being the mind's way of preparing for battle. Tomorrow would be the biggest battle of her military career, and she intended to be ready for whatever challenges awaited her. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test not just Sarah's shooting skills, but her ability to perform under the most intense scrutiny imaginable. Sarah woke before dawn on what would become the most important day of her military career. Through her apartment window, she could see unusual activity at the naval base. Military vehicles were arriving, and personnel she didn't recognize were setting up equipment near the weapons facility. Word had spread far beyond Coronado about her performance, and today would bring scrutiny unlike anything she had experienced. At 0500 hours, her phone rang. It was Chief Rodriguez. and his voice carried an urgency she had never heard before. "Martinez, report to my office immediately. We need to talk before the circus begins." Sarah dressed quickly and made her way through the base. She passed several news vans parked outside the main gate and noticed additional security personnel at various checkpoints. Whatever was happening today, it was being treated as a significant event. Rodriguez's S office was crowded with people Sarah didn't recognize. There were officers with naval special warfare insignia, civilian officials in suits, and even what appeared to be a military photographer. The tension in the room was palpable. "Martinez," Rodriguez said, "I want you to meet Admiral Stevens from Naval Special Warfare Command." Admiral Stevens was a compact, intense man with steel-gray hair and the kind of presence that commanded immediate respect. He studied Sarah with penetrating eyes that seemed to evaluate everything about her in seconds. "Petty Officer Martinez," Stevens said, "your performance over the past few days has generated significant interest in Washington. There are people who believe your demonstration could influence important policy decisions regarding women in combat roles." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. "Yes, sir. However," Stevens continued, "there are also people who believe your performance has been exaggerated or that you've received special treatment. Today's evaluation has been designed to eliminate any such doubts." He paused, letting the implications sink in. "You'll be tested on weapons and scenarios that we typically reserve for SEAL team candidates. The standards will be identical to what we expect from our most elite operators. No accommodations, no special considerations." Sarah nodded. "I understand, sir." "I hope you do," Stevens replied. "Because failure today won't just impact your career, it could set back the cause of women in special operations for decades." The first day of weapons evaluation arrived with typical California sunshine, but Sarah felt storm clouds gathering around her. She arrived at the training facility 30 minutes early, wearing her pressed uniform and carrying her personal gear. The other 11 women were already there, stretching and doing last-minute equipment checks. The training facility was impressive and intimidating. Multiple shooting ranges stretched out toward the ocean, with targets at various distances. Heavy weapons were arranged on tables like deadly museum pieces: M240 machine guns, MK-19 grenade launchers, and sniper rifles that cost more than most. People's cars. A crowd had gathered to watch the evaluation. Sarah noticed SEAL instructors standing with their arms crossed, wearing expressions that ranged from curious to openly skeptical. Some regular sailors had also shown up, word having spread quickly through the base about the women's weapons test. Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, a decorated SEAL instructor with 20 years of experience, stepped forward to address the group. He was a compact man with intelligent eyes and scars that told stories of dangerous missions. "Ladies, welcome to Advanced Weapons Evaluation," Rodriguez announced. "Over the next 2 weeks, you'll be tested on 12 different weapon systems. Each test will be graded on accuracy, speed, weapon maintenance, and tactical understanding. The standards are the same ones we use for special operations candidate." He paused, scanning the group. "I want to be crystal clear about something. There will be no special treatment, no lowered standards, and no participation trophies. You either meet the requirements or you don't." The first weapon was the M4 carbine, a rifle that Sarah had used extensively in her training. As the women lined up at the firing line, she could hear murmurs from the crowd behind them. $20 says none of them qualify expert level," someone whispered. "I'll take that bet," another voice replied. "That Martinez girl can shoot." Sarah tried to block out the noise and focus on her breathing. The target was 300 meters away, a challenging distance that required precision and steady hands. She adjusted her sight picture, controlled her breathing, and began the qualification course. Bang, bang, bang. Each shot felt perfect as it left the barrel. Sarah's muscle memory from countless hours of practice took over. She was no longer nervous about the crowd or the pressure. She was simply a shooter doing what she did best. When the ceasefire was called and targets were retrieved, the results surprised even Sarah. She had scored 98 out of 100 possible points, one of the highest scores recorded at the facility in recent months. Several of the other women also performed exceptionally well. Rodriguez examined Sarah's target with raised eyebrows. Martinez, this is outstanding shooting. Where did you train? Various ranges, Chief. I practice whenever I have free time. It shows. Rodriguez nodded. Let's see how you handle something with more kick. The next weapon was the M240B machine gun, a crew-served weapon that weighed over 24 pounds when fully loaded. Sarah had never fired one before, but she had studied the technical manual extensively. The weapon was designed to lay down suppressive fire and could shoot up to 950 rounds per minute. As Sarah approached the weapon, she heard snickering from some of the male observers. This should be good, someone commented. That thing weighs almost as much as she does. Sarah ignored the comment and focused on Rodriguez's demonstration. He showed the proper stance, grip, and firing technique. The key was using the weapon's bipod legs for stability and controlling the recoil through proper body positioning. When it was Sarah's turn, she could feel dozens of eyes watching her every move. She settled into position behind the machine gun, adjusting the bipod and checking her sight alignment. The first burst would tell her everything she needed to know about controlling this beast. She squeezed the trigger and sent a 5-round burst downrange. The weapon bucked against her shoulder, but her stance held firm. The tracers showed her shots were on target. Encouraged, she fired several more bursts, each one more controlled than the last. By the end of the exercise, Sarah had not only qualified on the M240B but had achieved one of the best accuracy scores of the day. The crowd behind her had grown noticeably quieter. During the lunch break, Sarah overheard a conversation between two SEAL instructors that made her both proud and more determined. I'll admit it, one was saying. I didn't think any of them would handle the 240 that well. That Martinez girl especially, she's got natural instincts. Don't get carried away, the other replied. Wait until we get to the really heavy stuff. The MK-19 will separate the pretenders from the real operators. The afternoon brought new challenges. They moved to pistol marksmanship, starting with the standard issue Beretta M9 and progressing to the more powerful .45 caliber pistols used by Special Operations Forces. Sarah had always been better with rifles than handguns, but her grandfather's training had been thorough. A warrior masters all weapons, he used to say, not just the ones that come naturally. The pistol course was designed to test speed and accuracy under stress. Targets would appear at random intervals, and shooters had to engage them quickly, while moving between positions. It simulated the chaos of real combat situations. As Sarah moved through the course, muscle memory guided her actions. Draw, aim, fire, move. Her shots were fast and accurate, hitting center mass on target after target. She finished the course in record time with a near-perfect score. But it was during the afternoon's final challenge that Sarah truly began to silence her critics. The weapon was a Barrett M82.50 caliber sniper rifle, a massive precision instrument that could engage targets at extreme distances. The rifle weighed 30 pounds and fired bullets that could penetrate light armor. Most of the women struggled with the Barrett's size and recoil. The weapon was simply too large for some to handle comfortably, but when Sarah took her position behind the rifle, something clicked. The weapon felt balanced and manageable in her hands. The target was 800 meters away, a distance that challenged even experienced snipers. Sarah adjusted the scope, calculated for wind and bullet drop, and settled into her shooting position. The crowd had grown completely silent, sensing that something special was about to happen. She controlled her breathing, found her natural respiratory pause, and gently pressed the trigger. The massive rifle roared, and through the scope Sarah watched her bullet strike dead center of the target. A murmur went through the crowd, but Sarah wasn't finished. She cycled the bolt, reacquired the target, and fired again. Another perfect hit. She repeated this process 5 times, placing all 5 rounds within a 2-inch circle at 800 meters. Chief Rodriguez walked over to examine the target through binoculars. When he lowered them, his expression had changed completely. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced to the crowd, Martinez just shot a group that would make our SEAL snipers jealous. The evaluation area erupted in surprised chatter. Several SEAL instructors who had been skeptical earlier were now studying Sarah with new interest. She had not just met their standards, she had exceeded them in spectacular fashion. As the group prepared to leave for the day, Rodriguez approached Sarah privately. "Martinez, I need to ask you something. Have you ever considered trying out for special operations?" Sarah's heart raced, but she kept her voice steady. "Chief, women aren't allowed in SEAL teams." Rodriguez smiled. "Policies change, Martinez, and when they do, the Navy is going to need qualified candidates ready to step up. Keep doing what you're doing." That evening, Sarah called her grandfather again to share the day's events. His voice was filled with pride when she described her performance. "You're making history, Sarah," he said. "But remember, this is just the beginning. The real test is whether you can maintain this level of excellence under increasing pressure." As Sarah hung up the phone, she realized that her grandfather was right. Today had gone better than she could have hoped, but she knew the challenges would only get harder. The weapons would get heavier, the tests more complex, and the scrutiny more intense. But for the first time since the evaluation began, Sarah allowed herself to believe that she might actually change some minds on this. Basic. Word of Sarah's exceptional performance spread through Naval Base Coronado like wildfire overnight. By the second day of evaluation, the crowd of observers had doubled in size. Sailors found excuses to walk by the training facility, and even some officers who rarely left their air-conditioned offices showed up to witness what was being called the most impressive shooting display in recent memory. Sarah arrived early again, but this time she wasn't alone. Chief Rodriguez was waiting for her at the entrance to the facility. "Martinez, walk with me," he said, leading her away from the gathering crowd. They walked in silence until they reached a quiet spot overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Rodriguez stopped and turned to face her. "I've been doing this job for 15 years, he began. "I've trained thousands of sailors, Marines, and SEAL candidates. Yesterday, you shot better than 90% of the special operations personnel I've worked with." Sarah felt a surge of pride but kept her expression neutral. "Thank you, Chief." "Don't thank me yet," Rodriguez continued. "Your performance yesterday has created some complications. There are people on this base who are not happy about a woman outperforming their golden boys. Today's tests are going to be designed to break you." Sarah's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "The Mk-19 grenade launcher, the AT-4 rocket launcher, and some other weapons that weren't originally on the schedule. They're going to push you until you fail, and then they're going to use that failure to justify their prejudices." Rodriguez paused, studying Sarah's reaction. "I'm telling you this because I believe you have the potential to change things around here. But you need to understand what you're up against." Sarah thought about his words as they walked back to the facility. She had always known that some people would try to undermine her success, but she hadn't expected it to happen so quickly or so blatantly. The morning's first weapon was indeed the Mk-19 automatic grenade launcher, a beast of a weapon that fired 40 grenades at a rate of 375 rounds per minute. The weapon weighed 72 pounds when mounted on its tripod, and the recoil was tremendous. As Sarah approached the weapon, she could see the expectant faces in the crowd. Many were clearly hoping to see her fail. The Mk-19 had been used to eliminate several male candidates from special operations programs over the years. Lieutenant Commander Hayes, an officer Sarah had never seen before, was conducting this portion of the evaluation. He had the look of a man who had already made up his mind about women in combat roles. "Martinez," Hayes announced loudly, "this weapon system requires significant upper body strength to control effectively. The recoil can actually injure operators who aren't properly prepared. Are you sure you want to attempt this?" Sarah recognized the challenge in his tone. He was giving her an easy way out and probably hoping she would take it. "Yes, sir. I'm ready to proceed." Hayes shrugged. "Your choice. Just remember, this isn't a game. People have been seriously hurt by this weapon." Sarah studied the Mk-19 carefully. It was definitely the largest weapon she had ever operated, but she had watched Rodriguez's demonstration closely. The key was letting the tripod absorb most of the recoil while maintaining a firm grip and proper body position. She settled in behind the weapon, adjusted the shoulder stock, and checked her sight picture. The target was a derelict boat 500 meters offshore, a realistic combat scenario. She would fire a 3-round burst at the target. Sarah took a deep breath, found her firing position, and squeezed the trigger. The weapon erupted with tremendous noise and force, but Sarah's stance held. Through the smoke, she could see that all 3 grenades had impacted the target boat. The crowd was silent for a moment, then broke into surprised chatter. Hayes looked genuinely shocked. "Lucky shots," he muttered, loud enough for nearby observers to hear. "Sir," Rodriguez interjected, "regulation requires 3 successful engagements for qualification." Hayes's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Fine. Martinez, engage the target 2 more times." Sarah's second burst was even more accurate than the first, with all 3 grenades striking the boat's superstructure. Her third engagement completely destroyed the remaining target, sending pieces of fiberglass flying in all directions. The facility erupted in cheers and applause. Even some of the previously skeptical SEAL instructors were clapping. Hayes looked like he had swallowed something unpleasant. "Exceptional performance," Rodriguez announced officially. "Martinez has not only qualified on the MK-19, but has achieved the highest accuracy score recorded this year." But Hayes wasn't finished. "Let's see how she handles something that requires real strength," he said, gesturing toward a weapon that made Sarah's heart skip a beat. The AT-4 anti-tank rocket launcher was a single-use weapon designed to destroy armored vehicles. It was fired from the shoulder and produced a massive backblast that could kill anyone standing behind the operator. The weapon itself weighed only 15 pounds, but the psychological pressure of firing it was enormous. "This weapon," Hayes explained, "to the crowd, generates over 3,000 pounds of recoil force. It requires tremendous upper body and core strength to fire accurately. Many male special operations candidates struggle with it." Sarah had never even seen an AT-4 up close, let alone fired one, but she had studied the technical specifications and firing procedures. The key was proper shoulder placement and follow through. As she picked up the weapon, Sarah noticed that several more senior officers had arrived to watch. Word was spreading throughout the base that something extraordinary was happening at the weapons facility. The target was an old tank hulk, positioned 200 meters away in the impact area. Sarah would have 1 shot. The AT-4 could only be fired once before being discarded. She positioned herself carefully, making sure the backblast area was clear. The weapon felt balanced on her shoulder, heavier than she had expected but manageable. Sarah aligned the sights with the target and controlled her breathing. The moment she fired, Sarah understood why this weapon intimidated so many people. The explosion was deafening, the recoil tremendous, and the backblast created a cloud of dust and debris behind her. But through it all, Sarah maintained her firing position and watched the rocket streak toward the target. The impact was spectacular. The high-explosive warhead struck the tank dead center, creating a fireball that could be seen from across the base. When the smoke cleared, there was a gaping hole where the tank's turret used to be. The crowd had grown completely silent. Even Hayes stood with his mouth open, staring at the destroyed target. Sarah calmly set down the empty launcher tube and turned to face him. "Sir, did the rocket impact the target as required?" Hayes could only nod, apparently too stunned to speak. Rodriguez stepped forward, a broad smile on his face. "Ladies and gentlemen, Martinez has just achieved something that less than 50% of SEAL candidates accomplish on their first attempt. Perfect shot placement on a moving target." "Moving target?" Sarah asked, confused. Rodriguez pointed toward the impact area. The tank was on a slight slope. The morning sun had heated one side, causing it to shift slightly. It was actually moving about 2 inches per minute when you fired. You instinctively compensated for that movement. The implications of Rodriguez's statement weren't lost on the crowd. Sarah hadn't just hit a stationary target. She had demonstrated the kind of instinctive marksmanship that separated elite operators from ordinary soldiers. As the morning session ended, Sarah found herself surrounded by admiring colleagues and curious observers. But she also noticed that not everyone was pleased with her performance. A group of officers stood apart, engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion. During lunch break, one of the other women participating in the evaluation approached Sarah. "Martinez, you need to be careful," Petty Officer Johnson warned. "I overheard some of the instructors talking. They're saying you're making them look bad and they don't like it." Sarah thanked Johnson for the warning, but she wasn't surprised. She had always known that excellence would create enemies as well as allies. The question was whether she could maintain her performance level under increasing pressure and scrutiny. That afternoon brought a new challenge: night vision shooting with suppressed weapons. This was advanced tactical shooting that even experienced special operations personnel found challenging. The weapons were equipped with sophisticated optical sights and sound suppressors, but the real difficulty was adapting to the strange green world of night vision goggles. As Sarah prepared for the evening session, she realized that her performance had already changed the dynamic on the base. People were no longer questioning whether women could handle military weapons. They were wondering how far Sarah Martinez could push the boundaries of what anyone thought possible. Sarah Martinez had always been different from other girls in her small Texas town. While her classmates spent summers at the mall, she was at her grandfather's ranch learning to shoot. Her grandfather, a retired Marine, taught her that precision wasn't just about pulling a trigger. It was about discipline, focus, and respect for the weapon in her hands. At 18, Sarah made a decision that shocked everyone who knew her. She enlisted in the Navy. Her mother cried, her father worried, and her friends thought she had lost her mind. But Sarah had a dream that burned brighter than their doubts. She wanted to prove that women could serve alongside men in the most challenging military roles. Boot camp was brutal. The drill sergeants pushed every recruit to their breaking point, but they seemed to push the women harder. Sarah watched as several female recruits quit within the first month. The constant yelling, the physical demands, and the mental pressure broke many spirits, but not Sarah's. Every insult, every challenge, every moment of doubt only made her more determined. During weapons training, Sarah discovered her natural talent. While other recruits struggled to hit their targets, Sarah's shots were consistently on mark. Her instructor, Petty Officer Williams, noticed her skill immediately. He was a gruff man who rarely gave compliments, but even he couldn't ignore Sarah's exceptional marksmanship. "Martinez," he called out one afternoon after she had scored a perfect round. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" "My grandfather, sir," Sarah replied, standing at attention. Williams nodded approvingly. "Well, he taught you right. Keep this up and you might have a future in special operations." Those words planted a seed in Sarah's mind. Special operations. She had heard whispers about the Navy SEALs, the elite warriors who took on the most dangerous missions. But she also knew that women weren't allowed in SEAL teams. The policy was clear. Only men could serve in direct combat roles. After boot camp, Sarah was assigned to a communications unit at Naval Base Coronado in California. Coronado was also home to the basic underwater demolition SEAL training program, known as BUD-S. Every day, she watched groups of men running on the beach, carrying boats over their heads, and pushing themselves through grueling exercises. She wondered what it would be like to be among them. Sarah threw herself into her work, but she never stopped training. Every morning before her shift, she ran on the beach where the SEAL candidates trained. Every evening, she spent hours at the shooting range perfecting her skills with different weapons. Her dedication didn't go unnoticed by her fellow sailors, though not all the attention was positive. "Look at Martinez trying to be a tough guy," some would whisper behind her back. "She thinks she's as good as the SEALs." But Sarah ignored the comments. She had learned long ago that action spoke louder than words. Her performance evaluations were consistently excellent, and her commanding officers began to take notice of her exceptional skills. One day, news spread through the base that would change everything. The military was conducting a study on integrating women into combat roles. As part of this study, they would be testing female service members on various combat skills, including advanced weapons handling. Sarah's name was on the list of candidates. The announcement created a buzz throughout the base. Some supported the idea, Believing that qualified women deserved the opportunity to serve in any capacity, others were skeptical, arguing that women simply weren't built for the physical and mental demands of combat operations. Commander Jackson, the officer overseeing the weapons evaluation, gathered the female candidates in a briefing room. Sarah looked around at the other women. There were only 12 of them selected from the entire base. Each had impressive records, but Sarah could see the nervousness in their eyes. "Ladies," Commander Jackson began, "you're here because you've demonstrated exceptional skills in your current roles. This evaluation will test your ability to handle advanced weapon systems that are typically used by our special operations forces. I want to be clear. This is not about proving a point. This is about honestly assessing capabilities. The evaluation would take place over several weeks. They would be tested on everything from basic rifle marksmanship to operating crew-served weapons like machine guns and grenade launchers. The tests would be conducted in front of military officials, including instructors from the SEAL training program. Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and pressure. This was her chance to prove that women could handle the same weapons as the elite warriors she admired. But she also knew that failure would not just reflect on her. It would impact the future opportunities for all women in the military. As the group left the briefing, Sarah overheard a conversation between two male instructors in the hallway. "I don't know why we're wasting time with this," one said. "Women just don't have the upper body strength for these heavy weapons. And when the pressure is on, they crack." "Give it a week," the other replied. "Half of them will wash out and we can get back to training real warriors." Sarah's jaw tightened. She had heard similar comments her entire military career, but now she had a chance to prove them wrong. That evening, she called her grandfather back in Texas. "Grandpa," she said, "I need your advice. I'm about to take on the biggest challenge of my life, and I'm scared I might not be good enough." Her grandfather's voice was steady and reassuring. "Sarah, fear is just your mind's way of preparing for battle. You've got the skills, and more importantly, you've got the heart. Trust in your training, trust in yourself, and show them what a Martinez can do." After hanging up, Sarah stood on her apartment balcony looking out at the Pacific Ocean. The moon reflected off the waves, and in the distance, she could see the lights of the naval base. Tomorrow would begin the most important test of her life. She thought about all the women who would come after her, and the opportunities that might open up depending on her performance. Sarah closed her eyes and made a promise to herself. She would not just participate in this evaluation, she would excel. She would show every doubter on that base that women could handle any weapon, any challenge, any mission that the military could throw at them. The stage was set for a confrontation that would challenge decades of assumptions about women in combat.